actually do a red and white background. I'm going to do red on the bottom. And I'm going to try and keep it from going too much into him. And that's because the boy that I know happened to graduate from a school that the colors are red and white. But again, you can do any color. Now this time I'm not going to move the canvas around. I'm going to try and keep it still so I can get a time lapse of it when we're done. So that's always fun to watch it from start to finish. Now a little bit of the carbon paper ended up leaving a mark over there, probably from how I copied it on. When that happens, just go back over and make it as thick as you can. I'm going to go ahead and fill in a little bit on this. And it is okay if it goes over, but the shoe on the bottom is going to be white, so I'm trying to keep the red from at least going into that section too much. If it's going to be a darker color, then it tends to actually fill in better. And it can go over the top really easily. Now to get red to be a true bright red, it usually does take more than one coat. But in this case, we're going to do a little bit of an ombre effect, so it's going to go into colors. And it is really good to try and have it as straight of side to side. Follow the line to make the line, because you don't want to go in too much, but then try and keep it going the left and right across to keep it as full as possible. Now on the edges, I am just going to do red all the way around. But if you do end up getting some up on top, pull that back in so that you're getting the more horizontal lines going across. And again, the red really does normally take a couple coats to get it a true red, and that's okay. It just happens to be his graduating colors. Now you don't have to do the school colors. That was just an idea I had that made it kind of fun and more personalized. The truth is you can do it any color you want. I personally love pastel colors, so that'd be another option. Or you could also just, the only thing I wouldn't recommend is just doing it with a black background. Simply because the gown has so much black in it with this particular image. So. Now you'll notice this gnome is a little boy, and he has a big old beard because gnomes have big old beards. Now I realize that's probably not true of most of our seniors, but I thought it'd be kind of a fun play on the gnomes when going with a senior also. So. And it's okay if it goes over a little because most of this coloring can just be filled in. Okay, now I'm going to get the edges with the red. I might need to get more red paint because it does normally take multiple coats. And I still have the palette colors left over from the little girl gnome. You'll also see I'm making a mess. That's okay. Normally I would use a plate, but I just didn't want to switch when I was in the middle of this. So. Now these little palettes you can get pretty inexpensively also, and I do have more than one near me. I just thought I could get away with just having a clean one when I was done. Apparently I'll be cleaning a table also. So when you paint, make sure that you're painting somewhere where if it does get messy, you're not going to get super upset, or put a tablecloth down, placemat, something. Because if you're having a really good time and you're really into it, it's highly likely you'll end up with paint somewhere you did not expect. It is not unusual for when I'm done painting for me to find paint in my hair, on my face, all over my hands. And yes, I know that means I'm kind of messy, but it is a lot of fun to paint, and I get into it, and I hope you do too. It's part of just enjoying it, is actually getting so into it that you don't realize what a mess you're making a little bit. Now you'll notice this time, if you watched the girl one already, that I did this a little differently. I'm doing red all over first, and then I'm going to come in with some white. The reason being because if we do a true ombre with this, it'll turn into a pink, and it's for a boy, so I don't want it to get that pink. So I'm going to do more of a faux ombre, where it'll have the reds and the whites and have that interest, but it'll be a little different. I'm just kind of going through now and cleaning up strokes. Oh, and when I was tracing, I must have forgot his little tassel, so we'll get that added on also. It goes onto this side. Now the beauty of that is that we can just add it in. It's a little harder than if you actually manage to trace it. I'm pretty sure the tracer does have it, but I'll double check to make sure it has it on there. Probably just in a hurry when I was tracing. So I'm going to dip this into the side of the white to get some white on here. I'm going to start bringing it across to kind of bring it in and get some interest, some contrast. Now you can do it with the full, like I am there, or you can do it with the side of the brush to get thinner strokes. Whatever you would like. The goal here is just to drop it in some of the white to get that little bit of coloring in there. And then I'll probably emphasize some white near the top. Now other than the background and a little bit in the shoe, we really don't use that much white in this particular painting. It's okay if it gets quite a bit. Now I did get some green in there, which I don't really want. That'll totally change the coloring. And for blending, if you get it a little bit wetter, it'll let it slide more, kind of blend together more. So it's one of the few times where I will use a little bit more water if I need to get it to blend a little better. And there we've got it. And that looks great. Nice interest and contrast on all of that. So next, I believe I'm going to do his beard. Now I'm giving him a brown beard, but you could do any color really that you want to. I'm going to go ahead and go with a number 4 brush here. It's a flat brush. Grab that brown. It's still wet in that red, so I don't want to pull too hard unless it's dry in that area. And try to get brown, pull through, follow the lines, so you do want it to kind of angle in at that. And again, I like to outline. That's mostly just so I don't get too much of the color into an area I don't really want that color in. With the hat, it's okay, it'll have black, but with his nose, that is actually going to be more of a flesh color. Doing the 2 sides of his beard first, and then we'll do the bottom. Pull that together. Now you don't need to watch both of these videos. If you don't want to, you can just do whichever one you would prefer, the boy or the girl. Although if you want to do both, by all means go for it. That could be fun too. Now his hair on this one, it does actually come over here and curl around. It's hard to see, but it is there, so I'm getting it over here too. And then we'll go ahead and do the brown down here. For the bottom part of his beard. And again, like I said, I like to do around the little outline. You don't have to do that. It's something I've just done for years. Probably because I was never the greatest at coloring in the lines. Imagine that. And so I would do that to make sure I didn't go out of the lines as bad, kind of force myself to stay in the lines. But it also helps you save time because then you don't have things going into the lines where you don't really want them to. Now, I'm going to add some yellow in. I did not clean my brush. I'm just going to go ahead and add it in as chunks of hair. Now this particular brush has some good bristles on it, so it will actually make some lines, which I actually kind of want for his hair. I think it'll make it look a little bit more like hair. I like to always start with a darker color on the bottom. There are other methods, but by doing that it kind of, I think, adds a little bit more dimension. Now, you may notice it's not super defined right there, but what I'm about to do is come in with the black and highlight that while I still remember where it was. And so I'm getting a liner brush, just a number 1 liner. I'm going to go like this. Oh, too wet. If it's wet, it will spread more, like it did, which will make it harder to control where we have it lined to. This one is fun because we can add the black into it as some of the hair as well, because it's really common to have different colors in our hair. Most of us have a plethora of colors filling in our hair color. It changes so much from season to season, depending on how much sun you've gotten, all those kind of variables. Now, one of the cool things about acrylics is it does dry pretty quickly. So if you do get a mistake, it's really easy to let it dry and cover it. Or if you catch it fast enough, sometimes you can actually just go ahead and wipe it off. I rarely do that though. For me, it's usually easier and it creates fewer problems. Sometimes I've wiped things off and ended up with more wiped off than I wanted, whereas just painting over it usually will fix it. And then you can see I got a little bit of a line there that I'll need to fix. But his beard is looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and outline this part too. And it's okay to vary the length of where you're outlining it. It's completely up to you. I actually enjoy that because I feel like it makes it really look good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush. I want to clean it really well because I'm going to use the same brush that I just had black on to do his skin tone next. And his skin tone, I'm using a cameo pink that I then mix with yellow, just to give it a little bit more of a natural look. Although with a gnome, you can really do whatever you would like. And that's definitely going to look a little bit more yellow. There it is. Now I'm going to first paint his hand over here. I have a lot of paint on this brush, so I want to be careful not to drop it anywhere where I don't want it to go. But see how nice of a flesh color that makes. And of course you can darken it if you can add other colors. You can add browns into it too. It'll make it a lot darker and really beautiful, rich coloring. Whatever you would like the color of the skin to be. Right here, so we'll get that too. Now you may be wondering, this little part right here that's still white, that's actually part of the ribbon that's around the diploma. It's just hard to tell at the moment. So I'm going to wipe some off the edge because I have a little bit up higher, more than I would like, and I'm going ahead and trying to get more on the tip of the brush so I have a little bit more control. And I'm filling in his nose now. Trying really hard not to get it into his beard because I don't want to pull those colors into his nose if I can try not to. But we do want it to be a relatively oval shape. It doesn't have to be perfect because gnomes' noses are not perfect any more than our noses are. And the most interesting noses are always going to have a little bit of a variance. Now I'm going to go back into the black. I'm going to outline this section here. I'm going to clean this off a little bit and I'm going to outline his nose. Now my poor liner brush has been through a lot. No, I'm going to go ahead and use a different liner brush. That one's starting to fall apart and I'm going to end up with a bristle in there and I don't want that. And just try and keep your hand as steady as you can. As I get tired, my hand tends to get a little bit shakier. And it's okay. Most people honestly won't notice that other than as they're watching you paint. But most of us don't have people sitting there watching us paint while we paint. That's just something unique as we're teaching. And then I'm going to put him a little smile down here. Because he's happy. He's graduating. There we go. So right through that beard. And then I'm actually doing all of the colors before I do the black this time. We have a thing where I forgot to put the tassels. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some yellow, trying to avoid where I got way too much of the other end. I'm just going to click here and drag it down and make a tassel from scratch. Now I did double check and the template did actually have it. I just didn't do that great of a job of tracing this time. And to be honest, I don't normally trace them. I normally just paint. Sometimes I will draw it on, but it's rare. Sometimes I'll just use a paint pen to draw on, especially if it's on a rock. That way paint covers it. All sorts of different options. But for this, it just really is a line. You'll notice I kind of went up here, so made a little bit of a mess there. So I'm going to grab some red and fill that in right over the top because yellow is much lighter than red, so red will cover it nicely. Then his colors are actually red and white, so I'm going to go ahead and put some of this red in there for his colors for his tassel. So you'll notice I'm kind of leaving this, but because it's over the top of red, it's not going to be as obvious till we add other colors in. But just pull. And then I'm going to add white. And it'll start to show. You'll start to see it a lot more as the white gets added. And then over the top of the white, I'll add some more red, just to give it the layered look of a tassel. And I really want this to stand out, even though we've got this red background. And that is an option to do the tassel a different color too. Sometimes tassels are different colors. They're not always the color of the class. I'm going to add a little brown, give it some more of a lining here. There we go. And again, some red, because I really do want that coloring in there. Maybe a little bit of white to repop it. But it should be fleshing itself out now. You should start to see a tassel in this. And it does not have to be perfect. You don't want to go over these over and over. You want to see the individual lines so it does look more like an actual tassel. And there we've got that. So his diploma, I'm going to go ahead and paint in gray. So I'll grab some gray now. And just get this painted in. Just like this. Fill that in. Go like that. And then try and do up and down strokes for the diploma because it's paper, so it would actually have a grain. And so that is actually going to be more important than you may realize to give the true effect of paper. Now there is a bow tied around it, so I'm leaving that section. And we are going to come back through and outline this with black, so you'll see that line clearer where it separates through. It'll actually give the impression of it being rolled up more too as we do that. Now I think I'm going to do, since his colors are red, I'm going to do the bow red also. So let's come in with some red, fill that in. There we go. Come in some red here, fill in this section. Very good. And then we've got the other side. And again, we'll be outlining it in black, so it'll be more evident that that is a bow. It'll be very obvious here in a moment. And it's all tied together there. Go ahead and clean your brush. And I'm going to actually grab the black. And outline this. So actually I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to let that dry and I'm going to go ahead and paint his shoes. I'm actually going to do his shoes bright green just for a little fun. They can peek out from under his gown. And of course you can do the shoes any color you want. You can also do the background any color you want. You really could do a full ombre, you can do blending, you can do whatever technique you'd like. Another cool effect can be to do white as a circle around the head and then go around and do circle motions. It's very easy. It looks great. I may do a tutorial showing that sometime too. But for this one I was going more for this because the main point of this is the background color of the school colors for fun. And the shoes are another spot where we are actually going to come back in and outline it, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Also, if you get outside of the shoe, not a big deal because the gown, of course, is going to be black. I'm just painting white on the bottom here. Don't have a lot of white left that I haven't messed with, but fortunately I don't need much left. And white, interestingly, does often cover your carbon lines if you use carbon paper, which is kind of a neat thing. But if it doesn't, it's okay, because again, we will get it. So now I'm going to go ahead and start painting the gown. I'm going to start with his sleeve and just outline. Oh, and that hand is still a little wet. I'm just going to pull up like this, pulling as much as I can to get that interest. I'm also going to come in with a highlight color once we get this going. But this is trying to follow the way that fabric would actually be a little bit. May have some creases in it as well. I'm just adding a little bit of white. Not super dark, just to lighten it a little, but also to show that, hey, that's a sleeve there. So it's a little different than the rest of it. There we go. Let's grab the black again, and we'll go ahead and get this going for the rest of the gown. And just again, I'm just outlining first. But you can actually just paint right up to it, that's fine too. I take my time. When we do a time lapse on this, it'll look a little faster, of course, but normally just take your time and have fun with it. Make sure you try and keep it kind of in the general shape. For this hand, it does actually have the thumb separate a little bit, so we'll get that outlined. Try not to touch the paint when you're on it if it's still wet. By now your background probably should be dry. But you can definitely see parts, like the paper on the diploma is definitely still wet. The bow that we just did is still wet. And the thing, if it's wet, it can sometimes blend in and change the coloring. With black, it's not as bad, because typically we just go over it again, but I'm going to add some more brown into that too. Now you may remember it's hard to tell with the gray over the top, but the diploma actually is rolled up like a piece of paper almost in this particular image, and so we'll get that redrawn back in. And I'm just going around the bow now also. Really defining that bow so you can tell that this is in fact tied around the diploma. See, it makes a huge difference. And I don't remember which way I had this rolled, but we'll go this, line like that, pull it kind of around. Go. And then the shoes should be getting close to dry, so we'll go ahead and finish going around this, and then we'll go ahead and outline the shoes. A lot of black at this point. We're finishing off with black this time. Sometimes I'll start with it, sometimes I'll end with it. The truth is, you can do it whichever way you want, whatever feels more comfortable. Sometimes I'll start with it on, especially on something like this where it has so much, but then you have to clean your brush a lot more often, so it can save time by doing it this way as well. Although I personally don't worry about how long it's going to take me to paint something, I just simply enjoy doing it. Make sure that the kids are being watched. Dad's watching the kids right now, the younger ones, so I can do this. Which is always awesome. Now while I'm doing edging, I'll go ahead and edge these out too. And it doesn't have to be perfect because we painted in, but kind of follow along to get the hat in there. And you'll notice I got red into the hat up here. Not a big deal because it's going to be black. We'll add some grays into it too to lighten it in some areas, but for the most part we're looking at black. Now, for those of you with really steady hands, it's totally fine to just do one straight line. You don't have to do it repeatedly like I do. I just do that because my hand gets a little shaky sometimes, so it gives me a little bit more control. And from there, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the number 4 brush. I'm going to grab black again, but it'll just help me fill this in a little faster because there's a big space here to do. I'm going up and down, following a little bit of the angle. Good. Just filling that in. Should be getting really close to having this all filled in here. The sleeve may end up blending in a little, so I may end up coming back in with some more color to really separate that out. And by color, I mean white or silver or gray, depending on what you'd like to call it. I tend to call it silver or gray. And there we've got it filled in with the black. White will work for this also to actually give it more texture and more contrast. I was going with gray because I wanted the white contrast a little bit more up in the sleeve. The gray gives a little gentler of a contrast, but it still has a little bit of catching the light. There we go. For up here, I'll go ahead and get this filled in. I'm just going to do the top, this part that actually touches the head first, and work my way up into the hat itself because I want to make sure we have that defined, so I'll need to add some white in around the edges or gray and have it a lot more obvious so that you can see where. And it is better to try and keep your brush strokes mostly going up and down. If you do them sideways, just try and go over it, then up and down stroke. Or vertical. There we go. Now before I do black up there, I'm going to grab some silver on this. And I didn't even bother to wash it off. And just line. I want to make sure that we can tell that this is where the cap portions meet. I'm kind of blending it in because I want it to be defined and to show where it meets, but don't want it to be so in your face that, hey, there's a big gray line right here, you know. There we go. Then I'm cleaning it off a little bit because I don't want that gray in there up in the top as much. And then we're going to go and line that with a nice, thick, just black. And then go around it here, big, thick black. We're not going to add any of the whites or anything else to that so that it keeps that defined space in. Now for the hat, I'm going at more of an angle. For that, it would really just depend. We will add some in texture and for lighting on this. Not quite as much as some of the other areas. relatively smooth, not a lot of lines showing in this particular one, which means working over it a little. And then try and even this line out. The easiest way to do that is to just run it straight and let the edge pieces do that. Do the work for you. Okay. So now I'm going to grab a small brush again, and I'm going to do a little bit of highlights up in the hat. I might add a little bit more to his beard. For his hat, I'm going to go ahead and do some gray. Not a lot, just a little up into here to give the impression of the light coming in from this direction. And you'll notice I'm going at a diagonal. It's because I want this hat to appear to be at the diagonal like that. There it is. Then I said I was going to add a little bit more to his beard, and what I'm going to add there is actually some more of the yellow so that it really pops, because we're not getting that full effect of the hair the way I was wanting it completely. It needs a little bit more of a light color coming in, and this will do that. And if you do like I did and add some black, you want to make sure you add some black in the other sections too. It'll help to pull it together as well. So since I added black up into this section, I'm going to add a few strokes of it into here too. I'm just trying to use the tip of my brush, but I'm doing it in different lengths and widths, trying to just give it that impression of hair. Normally I would start with the dark color first, but since I had added black earlier on another section, on this section over here, I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit added in over here too. And then I feel like this part of his beard has kind of lost a lot of the brown, so I'm adding a little brown back in too. There we go. And this titch of yellow, there we go. Then we still need to outline his tassel and finish that up. So for his tassel, we're going to go ahead and come back in with the brush, the liner brush, try and get one that has a nice point. So it's a number 1 brush. If it's wet, try and get it so it's not super wet, so it doesn't spread out as you're lining it. And here we go with this liner. Just like this. Good. Now it is totally okay to move your canvas around and have it all different angles, make it so you can catch it at the easier spots for you to have control over your brush. I'm just doing it this way so we can get a time lapse at the end as well, because it's kind of fun to see it go super fast. Now, we are almost done. Once we have this little tassel done, we're just going to be doing some half circles going down to give it that effect of the tassel rope, and it will be done. So I hope you all have been enjoying this. If you have painted one or both of the gnomes, the boy or the girl, please share the picture. If you do, you'll be entered to win a giveaway. I know the class is free, so I'm hoping that you all are actually doing the painting. Or at least it's free for now. It may not be free forever. But as I'm learning to do the recording on these and just kind of sharing some of it, it'll be fun. And there we go. Now you'll notice I got some red or some black into the red in some areas, so I'll let that dry a little bit, and then I'll come back in with the red and cover it. It's usually easier to not have to cover it, so if you can keep your lines good, that's good, but like I said, you can always fix it, just kind of play with it. And there we go. Oh, and I have a little bit of red down, or black down here that's off that I'll go ahead and try and cover. I'm adding some white in to help cover. Just make sure you pull it so it and looks planned. And there we go. Whoops. So I put that in. I'm going to go ahead and grab this brush and grab some red to go right over that white. Now usually you don't want your colors to just kind of meld like mine have, but in my case I've been doing this for a long time, so I know I'm not really getting brown in it, even though it's in the same pot as the brown. And there we go. Alright, well thank you so much for joining us for this tutorial today. It's Crafty Hearts Art, and I hope you have a great day. I hope you've really enjoyed doing this. Thank you.